So I thought it would be really interesting to talk to the two of them, especially as your composers. And we've been, as you don't know, we've been working on and discussing a lot of the entrepreneurship that goes into being a composer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Most recently with St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, who were here last weekend, we talked a lot to the composers about what is that, how do you get projects together? How do you get commissions? And with both of you, you're blending so much more than just, it's not just your music. There's so many more elements to it, to what you're doing. So I thought it'd be really interesting if you might comment on sort of how you got in, you know, obviously you both studied traditional composition. So how did you move from composition to these bigger works and these bigger projects?
Oh, okay. Wow. Did you? Oh,
no,
would
go
you?
ahead, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, maybe we should shut that door because I have such a probably some sort of ADD in a way. You know, when you said entrepreneurship in terms of composition, that gets me really excited, actually, because I think that it is completely valid to be able to create good music, great music, and make a good living, if not a great living, doing that. And that's a big, dirty word, you know. That can be anathema to the notion of what does it mean to be a serious composer. Does being a serious composer mean being a starving artist, you know? And what I'm getting at is this notion of there's a tradition of the music business within serious composition. That's part of our history, you know? Now, and again, I preface this with saying that there is certainly a time and a place to study. You know, I came in on the conducting aspect of what have you, and I'm reminded of the fact that one does have to go into a practice room and spend hours finding one's voice. I'm not trying to sidestep that issue. In fact, it should be a passion. I mean, it shouldn't be work. It should be your passion, you know. You should want to go to theory class, really. And if the teacher gives you one exercise, you should want to do 4 or 5. You know, it should be that kind of rigorous kind of academic pursuit. But the interrogative nature of how music publishing, the performing arts, community service, ambassadorship, being a relevant composer, right? Are you aware? Bernard Holland, recently in the New York Times, right? The audience as arbiter, right? That column, the maelstrom it set off. All of this to say to you that there is a time and a place where you have to take responsibility for your career. No teacher, it's not their job. Not your parents, not your friends, not the performers, you know, not a manager or an agent. It really is you. And there's something wonderful about that. You know, it's like your shadow. Your career will be as big and will be as large, and you'll have as large a following as you want, as you determine. You know? And if you want to make a living writing music, you can. It's as simple as that. You know, and there's a wonderful tradition of that, I think. I think if, you know, we don't talk, for me, I went to the University of Michigan, and before that, Vanderbilt University. And my academic studies, we didn't talk enough about that, quite frankly. You know, we talked about Beethoven's string quartets. We didn't talk about his relationship with publishers worldwide and his manipulation of those publishers. You know, if you mention Yanni, even if I do it now, you know, well, the fact of the matter is, you know, he's a Greek composer who's made a lot of money performing, you know. And I think that the internet and how that plays into how you want to form a career, your own career, whatever it is, I think that it's a real viable reality now to combine the best of academia and what you're learning here with the best of retail. You know, and how you'll fit into the marketplace. Because the fact of the matter is, that's what we need from each of you, I think. We need her music, you know? We need your music, we do. And it's not, the world won't have your music if you're doing something that you don't really want to do. You know, as we all go out into the real world, I think that's the worst thing for an artist. Teaching because you have to teach, you know? Being a waiter because you have to be a waiter, not because you really want to be. You know, so if you really want to I'm assuming, by the way, I'm making a big assumption. If your goal is to create music for a living, then let's have a conversation about that. And that's my expertise because that's what I'm doing. If your goal is to teach within academia, then I can offer you what I think might be correct, but I don't really have an expertise in that. All of this to say that, well, I have to give more brief answers and be more kind to my colleague here. All of this to say that I'm writing the music that I want to write, and I take responsibility for that as much as I take responsibility for building an audience for that music. And that's a tradition of classical music. That goes back to Ockeghem, really. That goes back to Handel and Haydn, you know, and Nina Simone.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, and I think that sorry, one second. But I think it's so interesting because I come from the same tradition of very, focused on just the music itself, and there's never this practical application of it, and I've personally had to find it myself, as I'm sure you did, and you as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fascinating now, though, to read something by Bernard Roumain, who did it actually. Everyone was talking about that one article. I don't know if you all read it. The New York Times was talking about, how you can clap whenever you want, like all these great things. It's like, God, we're so rigid now, and that's only really the tradition of this century, I think.
Yeah, but for me, that article was so relative to each of you because he was saying, look, if you are a composer, forgive my French, I won't say it, don't complain about a lack of an audience. You have to understand what an audience is looking for. He wasn't saying pander or write to an audience. He was saying that if you want 10 people to listen to your music, then you write music that only 10 people can listen to. But if you want 10,000 people to listen to your music, you have to understand that. You have to understand that, do you? What compromises are you willing to make? I'm not talking in terms of the musical language. I'm not married. I don't own a home. I don't have children. I have a career. So that's a loaded thing I just put out there. But again, I don't want to. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it.
I agree with you completely about how you really have to absolutely love with passion what you do. And I think eventually, if you really do it with passion, it would naturally lead to the path of success. I think success really depends on what it is, how you value success. I know, some people might have their own goal of reaching the challenge that they want to do, and maybe it doesn't necessarily mean that they have the acceptance or the attention, but maybe that is for you to evaluate what it means for you that you want to accomplish, I think. But on the other hand, I also completely agree with you on the fact that we do have to think about where we stand, especially in the contemporary music field. The lack of I feel a lot of times versus the concert setting, it's just so traditional, and in a way, it's always separating the audience with us and with composers and performers, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And I feel the need to really get them more involved in some way or another. So maybe for me, it came naturally also to combine with other medium because I just happen to have passion in them too. But it's just a way of communicating more with them and getting closer to them. And so I like doing installations where the audience actively have to participate and create a music with me. Yeah. And so that kind of engagement, for me, it's really important.
Yeah. What I love about your work is that it's this wonderful embrace of technology. I think that the piece for, I don't know the title, sorry, the piece for piano and video. Yeah. Right? And I was watching this last night where there's this wonderful relationship between every sound and timbre of the piano and an accompanying visual kind of response, if you will, and it's this, it almost, I watched the video twice. There's excerpts of the piece. What's it called? Piano con moto? Piano con moto. Yes, piano con moto. Right? And what I loved about the piece was that I watched it with your score, and then I watched it with the sound off, just to, and it was really compelling. Compelling in a way that a piece for solo piano is not. Not to say that a piece for solo piano is not as compelling, but I think that as a composer, you make certain rules for yourself. That's what it's all about, actually, right? So whether you're using laptops and working with a video artist or engaging the audience, or in my case too, using video screens or electric instruments. I have a 6-string violin here. This is a good, interesting, to me, I'm always trying to reference, So, this is a reference, I think, of Baroque viols in some ways. Rachel Barton Pine, can really talk to you about 12-string instruments and what have you. And these are hybrid instruments with pickups, so I can plug them into my laptop and effects and stuff like that. But I think that the use of technology, where it is inherent in the work itself, is also, I think, a very interesting part of classical music's tradition. For me, I'm thinking about Mario Davidovsky and his synchronisms, or even Berio. Saturday night in New York City, the sequenzas by Luciano Berio are going to be done, in a row. There's 14 of them, I believe. They'll be done. Yeah, I think it's one concert, if I'm not mistaken. Members of, I believe. Yeah, there's a whole Berio festival going on. Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that, however, okay, let me go off on a tangent real quick. So, the thing is, it's like, for me, I think the first thing is, everybody here is a composer or a performer or, well, you're here. Okay. And you want to get somewhere else, let's say, right? Let's just put it that way. You want that job. You want that, whatever it is, career. See, I mean, it's almost crass to talk in this way, and I'm still a little bit, I feel like somebody's going to come to the School of Music police are going to come into the, and take me. But, hey, man, I was there 10 years of it. 10 years of it. So I think you have to be able to stand up and proclaim, define yourself. I have a friend last night who was saying, too many people define themselves by defining others. Oh, that person sucks. Oh, I hate their music. Oh, that's corny. Oh, that's it. Okay. What about define yourself first? That's what I'm trying to do as a composer. Now, I can talk about it all day, but as a composer, as a music student, you have to be able to do it with an instrument. Everything there is there's no effects, there's nothing plugged in. I would say some of them are extended techniques, but I wanted my violin to be that drum, I wanted my violin to have that turntable, bass. Because violin, when I was growing up, 5 years old in South Florida, being a black boy and playing the violin was corny. It was completely irrelevant, So even before the videos or the laptops or the electronics or other stuff that we were both doing, I really spent years trying to develop a violin technique that was personal, ultra personal, So that's one place to start, If I say to you, well, define yourself. You say you're a musician. Like when you're at a birthday party, the whole family's there and it's somebody's birthday, they always pick the musician. Oh, sing happy birthday or go play happy birthday on the piano and you freeze. Oh, how do the chords go? But it's that kind of notion of if you say you're a musician, okay, prove it. There's nobody in the world like you, right? Okay, prove it. So
there's obviously this element of, say, married to your classical ability is a person who's performing from jump, right? Mm-hmm. And it seems like there's some composers whose role is maybe a little bit behind the scenes, right? There's this other kind of composer. Or like, it sounds like both you and Kotoka talk about, I have a love for video and a love for composition. I have a love for black music. I grew up in the South. Like, all these things are weaving, versus like when I think about classical music, I think about like people taking all of the stuff that you were and stripping you from that stuff to remember the classics and to remember them in a way that gives honor to these people. And if you deviate too far from that, that there's some offense that you cause some group of people. So I think I want you to respond both to like the idea of situating yourself in like identity and culture inside of classical music, and then your response to the critic that says, this isn't classical music. You know, how do you ever have to deal with that, or what are your thoughts?
That's a good question.
Was that? Yeah.
Both, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I come from very traditional classical training, and so although actually I was also inspired by other type of music like rock and pop, and I actually grew up listening to tons of pop music, and then built up my classical training actually kind of a little bit later, even though I was playing classical music all the time. So I mean, I guess for me, I am. You know, what you say about define yourself. I do have this sound that I like. I just can't lie to myself. You know, it's just the type of music that I just feel very passionate about and love. These are the more, I notice maybe, how can I explain it? Could be that it's more traditionally classically on that side of it. And for me, actually, what other people say or define, I mean, you cannot please everyone, and you cannot write. For me personally, I don't write for, or I'm not conscious about who I'm writing for, really. But I really want to write the piece that I have in mind. I'm always just so crazy about doing that next step, like new things, new challenges for me. And when the audience respond to that, of course I get excited. And, you know, when they're responding positively. It could be that they're passionately against my method of doing things or my aesthetic, and that could be actually also quite good feeling. Like, okay, I mean, I'm getting a lot of response. But at the same time, it's really about me. I just value. I do things. I see it. I evaluate it on my own. Well, did I make this challenge? I mean, for me, in my own, did I succeed that? Did I really want to do that? And okay, no, I haven't done it yet. I'm going to do my next piece. And it's just more about, for me, just sort of self-satisfaction. And I gain a lot from just doing that. Yeah.
I think for me, yeah, I think I'm always balancing, actually mitigating between different interests and different practical realities. For me, the practical reality actually began with fear. You know, I mean, I'm a composer because I was more afraid not to be. So, you know, Vanderbilt University, 1990, I think. I'm getting older, yeah. And okay, you know, there's no career development office. In other words, it's not, you talk about passion, well, the practical reality is I don't want to do anything else. It's very egotistical to say that, actually. It's pompous, sounds, when I articulate it like that. But I don't want to do anything else. So where are my models? Forget about black composers, Center for Black Music Research, Sam Floyd, Dr. Dominique Renee Delerma. I mean, these cats are massive and huge and legendary, but it's not even about that. You know, it's like Ani DeFranco, Medeski, Martin, and Wood. You know, go to their websites. And you talk about passion, you talk about putting everything on the line for your art. That's that kind of cross-referencing that I think is so vital and important. Now I understand on it. I understand Righteous Babe Records. I understand the relevancy of that company to the city of Buffalo, New York. And I was like, wow, You know, and more than that, well, what can a DJ teach me about playing the violin? You know? I remember the first time I came into the University of Michigan, the filters, low pass and high pass filter. Well, how could I do that on my violin? How could I make my violin sound as though it was being processed? You know, and I started realizing. When they taught me sul ponticello. They being wonderful music teachers throughout my life. Miss Hieronymus, Miss Griffiths, Mr. Miller, you know, but they taught me this, and then normal. That's it. On, off. And I started realizing, what if I moved the bow as I played? That's the sound I wanted. So I started realizing, oh, that's what a DJ could teach me. You know, that playing the violin could really be more than just playing the violin. You know, that there were other traditions that I could pull into the equation. The minute you start doing that, though, as my colleague here was leading towards, is that you do open yourself up to criticism. Absolutely. You know, and then you have to decide what's more important to you. You know, and you have to be very strong about it, and I think very clear in your mind that, you know, as I think that at the end of the day, if you have an audience that supports your work, that is a tremendous validation for the work itself. Not to say that every great piece of art or every work of art or not so great piece or whatever is not great unless there's an audience. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that if you have an audience for your work, a committed audience for your work, it does, in my view, help to say to the artist and to the audience, well, there's a validity. It's more than a validity. You know, it's a need. That's sometimes how you hear it. God, I need to. You know Radiohead, right? You know, I mean, I know a lot of people where the work of Johnny Greenwood and Tom York, it's a need. They must have it. They'll die without it. You know, that's the kind of validity that I think we both aspire to. At least I do. I aspire to. Yeah.
So do you guys want to sort of sample some of your works and show us, or we can listen to some of your projects? Is that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I would love to play. I'll just play a little bit. How about I play a little bit of? Well, okay. So this is the latest record. It's called Etudes for Violin and Electronics. It's a series of conversations. This one is between me and which one I want to play? Me and DJ Spooky. And I won't set it up. I don't really like to do that. I think, you know, just let the music. No, is it plugged in?
Yeah.
I'll just let the music kind of speak for itself. It should work, right? These things, it's always like that. Let's see. Oh, wait. Oh, here we go. Okay. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. This is Black Man Singing. All right, we need to hit play. excerpts of just the whole record. This is The Need to Follow with a duet with Ryuichi Sakamoto on piano. Sorry, but it's just, I want to give you a little bit of it. This is another duet with DJ Spooky. This is called Resonance.
I know obviously I've read some things. Philip Glass is a big influence on you, but you know, just when we listen to this, I'm sort of curious, how do you do it? What is your process? Because I've been to performances where clearly the remix or the whatnot is done afterwards, and I find that you can always tell when it's an afterthought. Whereas with yours, I feel like it's really part of the music. Like there's no real distinction between, you know, here's the violin part, here's this, here's the beatbox or whatever. Right. You know, and so I'm just sort of curious how involved, you know, are DJ Spooky or whomever, you know, when you're actually composing.
Well, a club is a very contrapuntal place. You enter a club and there's talking, there's the, you know, glasses chiming, maybe there's an actual musical act on there or a DJ, and then there's this proximity of conversation. So this beautiful woman is here and you want to talk to her, and then, you know, there's another couple over there talking and you're kind of, you know, you got one ear here, maybe one ear there, then there's the ambient room and maybe a car passes outside, you know, or a truck or a fire truck on the way over here. So, you know, life, I'm saying a club is a contrapuntal place, but I'm getting at is that this is very cagey in thinking. And, there's some wonderful quotes I want to read to you if there's time. But for me, it is always about, and I want, if there's time, I'll play you a piece. For me, it's always about the contrapuntal nature of assembling timbres. You know, so I'm always aware of that. Like for me, I'm always it's, and that probably has to do with, this is where I get, you know, years of really studying grout and really doing my my species counterpoint. But I really started thinking of, you know, I mean, this is, you know. So just trying to think, how can I, this is my new thing now. I'm trying to get away from, laptops and, I work with a DJ who samples me. You'll see this tomorrow night. We do a lot of stuff with live where he's sampling me in real time. But I'm really interested in how can I give the impression of, that playing the violin can involve foot stomping and talking and, just using, but really thinking about, multiple voices at once. That's really where a lot of so that's why a violin has just as much power in the mix as the bass drum. It's not in the back, it's not even in the foreground, Schenker. For me, it's really about foreground and middle ground. And the background is, well, that's a different place. Yeah.
So tomorrow we actually have DJ Scientific, so...
Yeah, the piece for Sonata for Violin and Turntables.
So do you compose for your DJs, or...
It's a score.
That's a silly question. Okay.
Yeah, it's a prose score.
Okay.
Where I'm saying everything is done by the minute, and so I specify this minute the violin will play 3 notes, for example. And then the next event, the violin will play 3 notes as turntable number 1 does this kind of activity, plays this sample, so on and so forth. But you'll see, we stick to the score. We can't play the piece without the score. Yeah. Yeah.
Does it change the energy in some way have tried playing without the score as more of a rough guidelines, kind of like indicating to each other, sort of like now or responding more to each other in that way?
Well, and I think I know where you're getting at. Am I defying the tradition of turntablism by asking a DJ to?
Or yeah, it sounds like it's mixing the two. Like in one sense, the classical score of
That's
the
right.
music, and in another,
That's
very
right.
free improvisational, turntable DJ
Right.
style of music making.
There's a lot of people in the world who are non-literate, but they're not illiterate. So grapple with that. Most musicians in the world don't read music because the music they play is too complex. By the way, that's my opinion. My parents are from Haiti. Okay, so the notion of I'm approaching the DJ as a cellist, and I'm saying to the DJ, okay, this is a score. This is what I'm bringing to the tradition as a composer, not even as a violinist. The piece has been done by other violinists, which is more interesting. Anna Kiko Myers is trying to learn the piece now. That to me is very exciting. But the point is, I'm interested in those kind of conversations where I'm saying to the DJ, okay, you can't read this type of notation, let's say traditional notation, note for note, but there are other types of notation within our tradition. There's Earl Brown, there are graphic-based scores, there are prose-based scores. Cage explored this, ad nauseum. So I think that for me, it's a prose-based score, and I always say to the DJ, okay, you read music. You read a certain type of music. It's very careful. I wish he was here to talk about this publicly because I think this is a very important part of when I use the word ambassadorship. We have hip hoppers coming to the shows all the time who at first are like, "What's going on?" But then we pull them into, I think, that wonderful world of the performing arts, where it is rigorous, it is notated, it is worked out. There's a certain amount of flexibility because it's a prose-based score. But still, both of us, you'll see, we are hanging on to that score for dear life. And there's something wonderful about that kind of rigor, that kind of honoring of that tradition. So the turntable and by the way, it's 2 turntables and a laptop that he uses. It becomes incidental to the tradition of making music. And that's something that I think is so wonderful, that you can put something down on a piece of paper, hand it to somebody else, and all of that passion and all of that, it becomes a religious act. Yeah. That's more important than, Jay-Z or Beyonce. And I love Jay-Z or Beyonce, or even Marie Ben-Ari. I love what they're doing, but, it's a different tradition. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
No, speaking of score, actually, it's true. You can, I work with a video artist too, and then there's this one piece where actually I had to kind of write down the score for them too.
Right.
Yeah, it's just so great. Fantastic when you can collaborate like this with the notating.
Yeah.
In that way. And so we're just sort of jamming, and actually, so I had to tell exactly what to come in, like when to come in with. But it was left for them to do whatever they felt like with the material that we've decided.
Well, even the piece you wrote for flute and tape.
Yeah.
What was so great for me is when I went to the website, I hit the wrong link, so the score came up, a PDF of the score.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that was wonderful because I had been listening to it, and it's a very subtle, very attractive piece, very much within the tradition of electroacoustic music, I think, But it is. What was so gripping to me was going back and listening. What is the name of that piece? I'm so sorry.
Is it Slipstream?
Yes.
Yeah.
Going back and then listening to the piece with the score. It was a completely different experience. Yeah. And that's something that we as composers, that's kind of our thing, and I want them to see some of what you do because, for example, I saw a concert by Kronos Quartet where they did a Penderecki string quartet. Have you seen? It's one of the early ones. It's all graphic based, and the way you play it is, you have kind of a bar, and you do this much of material, and this is supposed to be about 30 seconds. So from here to here is 30 seconds. Hey, that's cool, man. See, no, I always you go with it. I don't even try to ignore it. You go with it. All right. What Kronos did in concert is they all faced a huge screen, and the score was shown, was projected, right? And there was a red line right there. And the score scrolled past the red line, that helping us to determine 30 seconds, right? So they were watching the score, the four of them, playing as the score. And it was so wonderful because the audience got it instantly. Everybody was, and there's a point where it's just a viola and you see a little squiggy line, and, there was laughter. I mean, that's precious, man. You know what I mean? That has nothing to do with age, race, gender, sexuality. That's just, we get the game. Man, I really want to see some of her work.
Okay. Well, some of these things that you see projected on the video screen are live process, triggered from the pianist is doing, and some of them are not, so it's just sort of both. And I'm not going to play the whole thing, but part of the middle section of this improvisation part was where we sort of all kind of, we improvised all, everybody, the video artist as well as me triggering with the MIDI, through the MIDI keyboard and her. And as well, there's some sections where she has to sort of, looking at the video, there's some visual cues that corresponds to the score that she has to play. So she sees certain lines, she needs to play a certain passage or a certain element of the score that I've given her. And it was sort of that also up to her to decide what exactly she wanted to do with that. But I'm just going to play the first and maybe hopefully the last. I'm just going to forward. This is without the pianist.
Put as loud as I can.
You'll just see the video part, but. Maybe I'll stop. I'll just show briefly the next section, which is where the pianist has to improvise according to what she sees on the video.
Are there any parameters for the improvisation?
It's written on the score, and the pitch materials and the rhythms that she has to use. So these are all written out.
The visual language is written out, Kotoka? Or the visual?
Yeah. It's depending on the section. This one, yes. So the squiggly, these zigzag. If she sees that, if she sees this,
yes,
she has to play these pitches. And if she sees something else, she has to play another set of pitches with.
So is your instruction more like a key or a map, or is it written out? I'm trying to get at, like, as the composer, what language are you using? Are you using music notation or symbolic notation?
Both.
Okay.
I had to have both. Yeah, picture.
You had to draw.
I had to draw. Actually, take a snapshot. This is what you're gonna see.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a dance.
Yeah. Awesome.
Do you market your I guess the CDs? Do you market them online, or are you affiliated with a label, or?
Yes and yes, and I have a. See, I'm going to forget. Okay, where are they? They're in my green jacket. I have a card for you. My website has video and a store, a shop, and everything I've done and am doing, you can find out on the website, as well as staying in contact with me. And more than just the MySpace page, thank you so much. I do a blog, but I really encourage, it never happens, by the way. Well, I should say it happens 10% of the time. Look, let me be honest with you. Look, there's a reality that it's hard for me to, just pass these around. It's right here. Etudes for, I don't have the real copy here, this is just a promo copy, but Etudes for Violin Electronics was put out by Thirsty Ear Records. They're a great independent record company. And I've done a lot of collaborative projects with other artists. But most of my own recordings I've put out myself. And I've only very recently started a relationship with any kind of a recording company. And that was done for strategic reasons to retain control. But look, that said, I always like to throw this in there every opportunity I get. I think that, the most important thing for any artist, I think, is to have I think the next avenue for the relationship between artist and audience really will be online. By that I mean, ask yourself this question. Imagine your CD collection, your playlist, whatever it is. Now, say to yourself, you are only going to be allowed to retain the CDs of performers you've seen live. If you haven't seen them live, you have to get rid of it. What would your CD collection look like? Okay, so that's what I mean. I think that I'm a performer, and my God, I have my presenters here. I love live performance. Don't get me wrong, but I think that for composers, this is something for you to really think about. Be sure that you can address, cultivate, cater to an online audience. An audience that's going to be able to see your work, or at least get an introduction to your work online. And in some cases, that may be the only experience they ever have with your work. I've probably put in $5,000 worth of Bjork materials. I'm a huge Bjork head, I don't know what you call it. I've never seen her. I've seen her live once, actually. seen her live once, and that was luck. So you see what I'm saying? So as a composer, I think that start thinking about that. You know, there are young men and women all over the world who really will have an interest in your work, but may not be able to come see a live concert. What are you doing for them? So it's more than just novelty, is what I'm getting at. It's much more than just novelty, I think.
Well, I would agree. Actually, Daniel's not even your personal manager, but someone else at Opus 3 Artists.
Yeah.
Who, they mentioned to me a few years ago, and they said, "Do you know him?" And I said, "No, I was living in Aspen, and it was sort of the end of the world." And I was like, "No," and they were able to showcase you to me through this website, and it had everything on there. If you've not been to dbrmusic.com, you should definitely go, because everything's on there. And it was so clickable in an easy way. You know, YouTube is fantastic now, and all these things.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so for me, actually, this was my first opportunity to finally say, "Oh my God, he's here!" You know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but it's been like 3 years since
Sure.
I first, was familiar with you. So it is kind of amazing what the internet is able to do now for an artist's career. So.
Well, even with Miss Suzuki's work, I mean, I just see the excerpt where it came to the part in the Piano Komoto that's online, the excerpt. Mm-hmm. The minute that happened, when she was showing the full, and immediately I'm like, oh, when something is familiar, you're drawn to it. I mean, at least I am. When something is familiar to me, I have to stop doing that. When something is familiar to me, I'm drawn to it. And to prepare for today's talk, I went to your website and made sure to, because I wasn't completely familiar with your music. But, in a very short time, I was able to view your work and really reaffirming to me was when that excerpt came up just now, I recognized it. And there's something really wonderful about that. Now, what does that mean in terms of the world premiere and those traditions? I don't know. But, I don't want to give too many tangents. I have a notion about that too. Well.
Tangents are good. Musical tangents are good.
Yeah. Oh, well, you have more questions? Yeah.
I was just wondering if you have a sense of who your audience or audiences are. I mean, I know you play clubs, you play concert halls, really a wide variety of venues. So I'm wondering, do you see any kind of continuity across venues that you play amongst audience? Do you see you may have no clue who's getting to you through the internet, but I wonder what sense you have of what listeners are attracted to you, or why, from feedback you have, listeners are attracted to your music.
That's a good question. Who and why? I don't want to forget that. Did you want to answer that one first?
No, the question was no.
Yeah.
Who and why?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, actually. Maybe for me, actually, I have to re-ask you the question again. Could you restate?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious we've talked about the importance of connecting with an audience.
Yeah.
And I know you each have your own particularities and how you view connecting with an audience, what it is for you, what your goals are. But I'm just curious if you have a sense of who your audience or audiences are and why they're drawn to your music.
Yeah, I guess maybe going back to I was saying a little bit earlier about why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I know that it's for me it is in a classical, more traditional audience, and why why is it? I think maybe I connected people definitely who have the same interests, of course, obviously, and I am reaching out also to people who are interested in the visual component, being really interested in expanding space, expanding something outside of the tradition. And wanting to really participate, not in a traditional sense, but in a different way. And I think these are the audience that I think, these are the people that I'm reaching out for. And I notice that these are people who are, interested in seeing and their curiosity.
And I saw your audiences. I mean, it seems like you do a lot of new music and electronic music festivals.
It's interesting, mixture of different kinds of things. But I like seeing that. I rather see mixture of people from VJs and video artists and a mixture of classical composers to computer music to all these mixture of things. I think that's why I love collaborating. I mean, I actually wanted to ask you about that too. I mean, the collaboration and what, because actually for me, it's composition, especially in classical music skills. It's all about really yourself, and all you need is just a paper and a corner, and you're always completely by yourself. And I love sharing these things with other people. I learn so much, and also just expansion of things that I haven't thought of, and also expanding the audience, actually, people who are, they're inviting all these crowds as well as me, so there's all this exchange happening, so I like that.
Yeah, and a lot of work in Europe as well, I think.
Yeah.
It's different in European and Asian countries. I think that for, I want to just answer this.
No, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a question related to it.
Okay.
And it's almost a question in the form of a statement, but both of you are very, cross-culture in a sense, we're all an amalgam of a bunch of different cultures, but that's used very divisively in many ways. Like people criticize, classical critics criticize you for using too much pop or vice versa, but it's all, but it seems to me that's all fictional anyway. How do you see it? I
think you're right. I think an audience is a very sophisticated entity, and you're right. I think that it has the potential to be very divisive. Absolutely. I think that I'm really interested in following the multiple traditions that I think everybody in this room has kind of followed. I'm sure everybody in this room has their classical music recordings that they love, Chicago symphonies down the street. That's a big, I would assume, part of your life. And I think you probably have gone to clubs and you've got your favorite, Joni Mitchell or Bob Dylan records or what have you. It's a very exciting time actually in the varying degree of music that's available, and that music that can be purchased, and music that can be attended. You have all the resources in a place like Chicago. It's extremely diverse. We haven't even talked about jazz yet. And I'm in Chicago. So and the blues. So I think that for me, I always like to say my audiences are age 7 to 70, and just about every color out there, and I think that I think there's a lot of artists doing very similar things because I'm modeling my career off of them. So a Phil Glass concert, I remember going to a Phil Glass concert in Nashville, sold out, probably 2,000 people, and there were people with purple, people are like, and I spent 4 years in Nashville. Nashville's a very diverse place, but this was a diverse, this was the minority's minority of an audience, It was really exciting. It was something that the Nashville Symphony, as wonderful as it is, really couldn't do, really couldn't cater to, really couldn't address. So I think that for me, I think people come to I know the audience who comes because they do chime in on MySpace and YouTube. We're in this notion of people want to comment anonymously. They want to comment publicly but anonymously, sometimes to be divisive, because I make it a point, Daniel Roumain, great. Google search that. Oh, wonderful. Okay, Daniel Roumain sucks. Google search that. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Keeps me honest, and it's really wonderful. There were people out there. One guy called me the Antichrist of classical music. I love that. No, it's okay. That's all right. You're right. So, I think that, I'm thinking about today, here's this very sophisticated young woman, here's this somewhat sophisticated older man, and, but just look at us, even in this prestigious university, I don't know if we are iconic of classical music composers. And that's okay, because if you say Tiger Woods, the Williams sisters, in my lifetime, there was no way you could say that somebody was going to be iconic for golf who is Tiger Woods. That's unbelievable to me. And by the way, I haven't even talked about the recent election coming up, right? And by, you know what I mean by iconic? I'm using that word purposefully. You know, it's not just, Barack Obama, you're probably over that. Or, you know, it's not, but it is everything that his image represents. You know, it's much more than just African American. So I think that, you know, meeting you for the first time, and that, by the way, I was a little bit like, I didn't realize you're so young, you know, because I didn't actually, no, but it's certain, you know, you, I don't know if you've done it on purpose or not, but you're
I'm young, I look younger than
you look much, yeah? Well.
I hope to think that's what it is.
All right, you're 57, right? But no, what was interesting is, I think the biggest difference, this kind of is answering both of your questions, you know, the people around me, and I need to take a little more control of this, the people around me have found a way to use the way that I look in a way that I need to be very careful about, actually, to be honest. I mean, they love and they care about me, but the people around me are wanting to forward a career. And that's something that, again, I'm saying that because if you go to my website, and if you go to Ms. Suzuki's website, the biggest difference is that you see me all over it. You know, and and am I wrong in that? I don't.
Yeah, no, that's true. I hardly have any.
Right,
yeah.
And that is something that I find appealing. I'm drawn to. You know, there's something to be said about that. Probably as I get older and the looks fade, you know, but it's something more than that, because I think that for me, the groups that I love the most, whether it's Mahler. See how I'm saying it? But it's just really, I can't say it any other way. You know, I don't know, I'm sorry to give such big answers, but what I loved most about being at university was going to the library and just looking at the fast meal reproductions. You know, looking at the pictures. I played at the Smithsonian, at the Library of Congress, and they allowed me to actually hold the Brahms Violin Concerto. You know, with all of his, and it's, you know, behind plastic because he used very cheap paper and ink. And then Mozart's A major violin concerto, I could hold it in my hand. He used very good paper and very good ink, by the way. So you can actually hold it in your hand. I could feel his, and you could see where he's re-dabbing, and just, it blew my mind, right? The point I'm saying is that these iconic images for me are very powerful. It's not just pop music, man. I mean, it's very powerful. I don't know about you, but in Grout, do you guys still go through Grout? The Grout history book. I mean, those pictures of Brahms, you see the pictures of Brahms with the tea tray or the beard or whatever. I mean, these, or the death mask on his deathbed, you know, the hair's all matted. I mean, these things are very real and powerful to me. In some ways, as real as the music itself. And I think that there's something about that 2008 represents. You know, Radiohead's latest record, they're not on it at all. But they are completely responsible for the way it looks. And the way it looks reflects the way it sounds. And that goes back to the 60s and 70s and LP records, you know? So there's something really wonderful about, well, how do we, you know, just looking at our two websites, thinking about that collision, you know, that choice. Because I think it's a choice. I get this feeling that you didn't want your picture, right?
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and maybe, and again, I'm opening another Pandora's box. Does that have anything to do with you being a woman in classical music? I ask this humbly as a man.
No, not really.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
But I think it points again to the compositional perspectives. Like, your work is performative in this way that's like very extrovert. You know what I mean? And Kotoka's work seems more like sometimes she's writing for performers, or it's already behind the scenes, or it's a video projection and sound, and Kotoka's like an audience member, and no one knows that she's the composer of the thing. That there's a different relationship. There's like personality. I mean, I have so many questions. I'm gonna like wrestle you at dinner or something.
Yeah.
But like, you know, there it seems to also suggest. Yeah, very much like the strategies that you guys go about your livelihood, and the strategies of your personality, and like the output. Because like, and you know, it's so great. I didn't realize that DJ Spooky was doing so much work with you, but it seems like you guys have also figured out a way, you know, that the complexity of Black and the complexity of like multicultural, right? That it feels like on some level, the Haitian piece combined with the classical piece automatically creates something hybrid. And like the Japanese piece combined with the classical piece automatically suggests that if there's a new music, it's gonna be a little bit different. And then how much do you guys choose to take advantage of that, exploit the difference, or distance yourself from the possibility of difference and like stick to the tradition? Like I know some classical opera singers who choose to not deviate. They never sing jazz. They would never be caught dead singing a blues because they committed themselves to Wagner or, you know. But it seems like you at least have accepted that, like, that there's these things that you mitigate, you know, and it's actually really beautiful and thoughtful and complicated. Like, it complicates classical music when you like, you know.
Well, you know, I think that as we wrap up, you know, we started this discussion using, you know, classical music, tradition. I was talking about this table, you know, this university, this prestigious university in this historic town. Anybody knows anything about Chicago, you talk about a divisive place. You know, this town has struggled in terms of its self-identity. You know what I mean? And these things you find in Australia, Melbourne, Australia, in Berlin, in France, right? The Sudanese. How long do you have to live in France before you are a French person, right? So this notion of self-identity, for me, I love classical music in that there was a time when I felt like an outsider, that classical music was all about white men, white European men. Man, that is so 1998. And I think it is so up to us to keep forwarding that notion that classical music is about Ms. Suzuki and about me and about all of you and your wonderful professors here and the presenters here who are bringing great work to the University of Chicago and vice versa. And I think that this notion of who the audience is, you know, there's that wonderful intersection between audience and art, you know, and audience not as arbiter, but audience as friend, as collaborator, that conversation, you know. So somebody who's 70 years old watching what I do with a DJ is just as vital to me as somebody who's 17, you know. And not speaking for Ms. Suzuki, I think that I'm really curious as to what's going to happen next. You know, not the next big sensation in classical, you know, Dudamel or whatever it is, but really as a society, what's going to happen next and how classical music will react to it. You know, because to me, I feel like, I always say, you know, Björk is an amazing Icelandic composer. And she says that about herself. And there's something really wonderful and relevant and vital about that, you know? And, you know, composer now is such a wonderfully loaded term. You know, I don't have to be the violinist who happens to perform his own work. No, composer. And there's something rigorous and real about that. So again, I'm assuming all of you are composers or interested in what have you. And I think that there was a time when it's hard for us. And we really didn't talk about how to make a living. But if anything, I would like this to be empowering, that composers are real and relevant, you know, and it is up to us. I'd like to think it has always been up to us, but it's up to us, you know. Bill T. Jones says that our political leaders have failed us, so now, again, we must look to artists.
Fantastic. So that's what Art Speaks is all about that. And thank you so much. I will wrap this up. There are more events coming. 6 o'clock today we'll be over at the Center for Race, Politics, and Culture, where Bakari Kitwana and DBR will also be speaking a little bit about music and art and hip-hop and all that sort of stuff. And then tomorrow is the performance in Mandel Hall at 7:30, so I hope you all come, because it's going to be amazing with DJ Scientific, if he gets here in this lovely snowstorm. So thank you so much to Kotoka Suzuki. And